Welcome to the Words That Change Lives podcast, helping leaders, coaches, and small business owners to 10 times the impact of their message. Join us as we delve into the art of powerful language, enabling you to speak with unwavering honesty, communicate authentically, and create a lasting impression with every word. This topic today is something that I bet every single person that listens to this podcast, or every single person that walks the planet, will have experienced at one time or other in their lives, whether you like it or not. And sometimes, when you least expect it, it can rear its little head. I'm talking about imposter syndrome. Yes, the golem on our shoulder. And what it's all about and why it's there and what we can do about it is the topic of today's podcast episode. I'm talking to Lisa Moore, and Lisa is someone who's been a colleague, a client, a friend, and a co-host for many, many years. We worked together within the business coaching space for many years. And then we co-hosted the Radio Reverb Brighton business show and hosted that for a number of years. Lisa's then gone on to, she does many things. She has hosted the Athena Network. She has built her own business within wellness and coaching. She now works for the fire service within leadership development, and she is an MC and also is the president of the Lewes Speakers Club. So she does many, many things and wears many hats, but it's a really great conversation. And I think it's something for anybody to listen to or think about when you are doing something that maybe scares you. You might be transitioning to a new role. You might be doing something you've never done before. You may be embarking on something. Maybe you're hitting a stumble in the road and this imposter syndrome feeling comes up. So listen to this, have a listen, let me know what you think. I'd love to know your thoughts on imposter syndrome, what you think about it, and how this episode has resonated with you. So get in touch. So, when it comes to imposter syndrome, there are lots of opinions about it. Some people believe it's a word that's been a term that's been used too much.
Yeah.
Some people think it doesn't exist, and other people feel it and live it every single day. What is it really?
I suppose I can only really say it from my view and how I experience it. But my view of imposter syndrome is that it's that inner voice, and whether you hear it or whether you sense it, because I think sometimes it's different. You can hear it say, "Oh my goodness, what are you doing here? How do you honestly think that you could do this? Who are you to be standing on stage?" Or "Who are you to be giving this presentation?" Or sometimes it comes across as it's that sense of unease and knowing you're in the wrong place. So it's like that. It's that inner voice, that inner sense of you're not good enough to be doing this, and they're going to find you out, and somebody's going to come along and say, "Scoot, mate, you shouldn't be doing this." So it's for me, it's that. Yeah. Definitely that.
Yeah, and for me as well. I think if we're to try and sort of, understand that feeling within ourselves, and I encourage anybody listening to take a moment and think, what does this feel like for me? For me, it's almost like a blanking in the brain that cancels out all your knowledge and experience in something and fails to bring up the evidence that actually you do know what you're talking about. That's not always the case, right? But there are moments, and quite frequent moments, where you're in a situation, and we'll talk about triggers and things like that in a minute. You're in a situation, or you're in an environment or a dynamic or some type of situation, and your brain decides to forget that you do know what you're doing, you are worthy of being there, and you are credible, you are worthy of saying what you need to say and what you want to say,
Yeah.
and that you're going to be appreciated, validated, and recognized for whatever it is you're doing.
And I think sometimes it's not that sometimes it even, you do have the evidence and you have this little battle going on in your brain as the evidence comes up going, well, you've done this before and you've stood in front of, 30 people, 100 people, 1,000 people. You've done this, you've done that. But the other brain is going, so that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean you can be here. So sometimes, like, I agree with you. Sometimes there's that it's like the memory banks have been swiped. But then other times there's this battle going on with those two voices, and you don't believe the evidence, or you start discounting the evidence of well, you've only done it once. That doesn't mean you're good enough because you've done it once.
Yeah, so it's I call that Gollum on your shoulder, and it is like a battle, isn't it? It's like an internal battle of the angel and the devil, and most of the time, in those situations, Gollum wins, right? Because Gollum is a negative voice. It sounds quite harsh and mean.
Yeah.
But what I realised and discovered, and I can't remember exactly when I had this light bulb moment, I went through some kind of inner child training or something, was that actually that voice is our protector.
It is. It is. It's our reptilian brain that has been there since day one, like thousands and thousands of years. It is there to keep us safe. It is there to keep us alive, to protect us. So I've certainly found that being kind to that voice and almost thanking it, saying,
yeah,
thank you. Yes, I hear you, but it's okay. I've got this and I'm going to be okay.
It's almost like you have to parent Gollum.
Mm.
And let's talk about that a little bit more, right? But for people that might not understand or know, or have read up on these sorts of things, that and obviously evolutionary psychology is one of my favorite things to talk about, and why we behave the way we do because of how we behaved all those years ago, and we're still the same product of that. The evolution happens on such a massive time scale. We're such a fragment of that. 25,000 years ago, we were the same as we are now. We were exactly the same, but we were living in incredibly different environments where we had to scan our environment. We had to be on high alert all the time in our environment. And therefore, we had to protect ourselves. And so therefore, that voice is perceiving threats in the environment and can't distinguish between the saber-toothed tiger or the crowd in an auditorium when you're giving a talk, and will try and protect you by getting you out of that situation and keeping you safe, right?
Yeah, it's that amygdala. It's that part of your brain it's like that radar all the time. And I talk about this in some of the leadership programs. Is that radar is out there scanning, and it's gonna, it's fight and flight. It's going to tell you whether to run away. It's going to tell you whether to fight back, or worst case scenario, and people worry about this with public speaking, is that freezing of going, I can't remember what I'm going to say.
Yes.
It's that part of things. And then so once it's gone from that part of your brain, it sort of goes into the limbic and the emotional center of your brain. But that part of your brain the reality, it doesn't have to be real to have an impact on you, which is why when you go to watch a film that's a sad film, you start feeling emotion, even though you're sitting in that cinema chair watching something on the screen, knowing it's not actually real, it's not actually happening, but your emotions will happen. So you still get those feelings that come up for you.
And in your experience, because you've got quite extensive experience in all of the different things you do, we can kind of dive into those as we have this discussion. Who experiences this the most? Are there any particular groups of people, or does it not discriminate and affect us all?
I don't think it necessarily discriminates. I mean, there is research out there that shows that women tend to have it more than men, but the stats are quite close, actually. I think we deal with things that, in a different way. Genders deal with things in a different way. And I think that sort of nurturing of girls versus boys, and we have to remember, there are other genders out there.
Yeah.
Boys are told to get on with it and get out there and face it and be strong, whereas girls aren't necessarily taught that way. And I am absolutely generalising, but I don't think that helps us. But yeah, women do tend to face it more. And what's fascinating is I remember doing a piece of research for my coaching business, probably, I don't know, 15, maybe even 20 years ago. And I interviewed a lot of women that I'd known over the years. Some I'd worked with in the corporate world and some I'd got to know. What was so interesting was every single one of them said, without doubt, that they had this worry about what people thought about them, that they thought they were going to get found out, which shocked me. Especially one lady who was a very strong, capable, I never ever thought that she had that. And she said to me, every day I'd get up and I think that somebody was going to come and get rid of me and take me out and go, what are you doing here? So it's much more common than we think.
It is, and you've made a really good point there in terms of it doesn't discriminate against seniority level as well.
No.
I work with mainly senior leaders, and I've seen, a pattern. Again, it is mainly gendered in terms of women identifying people within senior leadership levels, that it's prevalent, as well as, all other levels within an organization and at all levels of accomplishment as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Which just goes to show how innate and in our DNA this response is. And I have to just quickly reference my a client who's been on another episode, Tony Brooks, who is a specialist in survival psychology, and he's got a book on this topic, and imposter syndrome is one element of survival psychology. But it just goes to show that everybody can experience this, and there is some comfort in that. But let's think about the environments in which this feeling, this internal protector, can be triggered. And of course, it's going to be different for everyone. But in your experience, maybe personal, maybe the people that you work with, what sort of situations and environments is it triggered?
I think it's in those situations where you put yourself into something that's unfamiliar. So I think that unfamiliar it's really common. Somebody, perhaps you've stepped up into a management role and you haven't been in a management role, and you're asked to present your views on how the team is going to work in the future. If you've never done that before, that can be a really good trigger. Somebody asking your opinion in front of others, your peers, people that are maybe more senior than you, or people that you really respect, it can be another trigger.
Yeah.
So it's those different situations. However, though, I think it can suddenly appear when you least expect it, even when you're in a really comfortable place. I've had situations where I've been out with a group of friends who I love and I know really, really well, and we're chatting away, and all of a sudden it can be a look that somebody gives you. It can be just a sense of, I'm quite good at feeling energy. So it's a sense of energy or frequency in the room that you can go, it's almost like, in those films where you get sucked back. It's that feeling of, oh my goodness. So I think it's more prevalent when you're in those difficult or uncomfortable situations you haven't been in before. But I think it can occur at any time. When you're tired, when you're physically, emotionally tired, when you're hungry, when you're thirsty. I think those things can have an impact as well.
It's interesting as you're talking, I'm thinking of, well, the last bits you said there, maybe not, but mostly it involves other people. Now, when I say that, I mean it is perceived thoughts of other people, or seniority of other people, or words or looks or body language of other people. And one of my big triggers, I haven't really ever shared this, or maybe I should go to therapy and talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
One of my big triggers for imposter syndrome is perceived thoughts of people out there, just people out there in the world, and what they think and their opinions and views. Now, I will say I've done a lot of work on this, right? But it still rears itself up every now and again. It's actually happened very, very recently, because I'm going through a bit of a transition at the moment. I'm moving into a new season of life, new chapter of work, all sorts of things like that. And then naturally it's raising its golem is
coming up.
And it's that perceived thought or opinion of people out there in the world.
Yeah. And this weekend, I, for the first time, emceed a corporate conference over 3 days.
Wowzers.
A fantastic opportunity. And I was really excited about it. And there were moments throughout those 3 days where I was standing up on stage, talking, introducing people. I ran a fireside chat about burnout.
Brilliant.
Where that little voice goes, they might not like what you're saying. They might not agree with what you're saying. Why are you saying what you're saying? And that's okay. But I spent so many years worried about that judgment of others. What will they think of me? It stopped me doing things. It stopped me growing my business, stopped me making decisions. But let's face it, human beings judge other human beings. That will never, ever stop. No matter how much personal development, self-development you do, it is automatic in our DNA to make a judgment on somebody. Somebody walks along the street. Somebody drives their car. Somebody dyes their hair a different colour. We will automatically go to, well, I really like that. No, I don't. Well, why did they do that? The trick and the thing that I've learned is to recognise you have judged. And you then have a choice as to what you do with that. So even standing on stage, being an MC, I'm scanning that room and I'm making judgments on all the people in the room too. So I'm doing the same to them as they're doing to me. And it's like, I think once I got happy with that, it's okay, because we're all doing it. We're all doing it all the time, and it will never stop. What matters is how you respond to that, and it's not that you don't care about what other people think. Because I think there's a language around, I don't care what you think of me, because that can be a bit ego, as I don't care.
Yeah, it can. Yeah.
It's when you don't mind. I don't mind what they think. It's absolutely fine for them to think the way they think. As long as you feel that you're being humble and authentic to yourself, I think that's the difference.
That's a really good point, right? So let's think about that. How can we understand that people will always have judgments and opinions out there in the world? And let's put some context around this. This could be when you are standing on a stage, you're presenting something in a meeting, you are going live online, you are posting content on social media, you're maybe doing videos on social media, you are addressing an audience, you're emceeing, you're facilitating, anything that involves you standing up and showing up and communicating in some way, right?
Yeah.
That people will naturally judge, and we've just, again, got that as a natural thing within us. The trick is to know yourself so well and be so comfortable and solid in who you are, what you stand for, what your values are, what you're here for, what you're here to share, what your strengths are.
Yeah.
That even if people do have opinions and views, that's okay. Doesn't have to affect how you feel about that.
I've got a really good example. So this weekend, running the fireside chat around burnout. So I had 3 brilliant people on stage that shared their stories, their experience around burnout. And we were having a very good discussion with the audience about managing your time. And this was the events industry. So they work hard. They're 24/7. They're fun people. They're creative people. They want people to have a good time. So therefore, there's quite a lot of burnout that goes on in that industry.
Yes.
So we were talking about finding balance and not sending emails at silly o'clock in the morning and setting boundaries. And then a guy put his hand up in the audience and said, I disagree. And there was a moment that I went, oh my gosh, how am I going to handle this? But it was so good to have that. Somebody was honest enough to say, I disagree. You know, sometimes we do have to send emails at silly o'clock in the morning, and sometimes we do have to work really hard. And why should we be telling ourselves that you have to do the 9 to 5? And it's like, do you know what? I'm really glad that you've said you disagree, because let's open that discussion up. Let's have. What I could have done, and what I might have done a few years ago, is I would have fought back, because he triggered my ego to go, how dare you? How very dare you? I didn't. I think imposter syndrome has allowed me to be able to step back and go, it's okay, because it doesn't matter. He's judged me. He's and it's not me he's judging. He's judging what we've been talking about. And it was all right to open that up and go, okay, I hear you. Let's talk about it. Let's listen.
Yeah, that's just referencing another episode on the podcast, productive disagreement, right? And how we can welcome different opinions and views. That doesn't mean to say that we have to absorb that or hold that true to ourselves or alter who we are or what we believe in. Some people might not like it, and in that type of situation, it's like, great, okay, let's explore that. Let's use that for part of the discussion. Rather than being affected by the perceived opinion and dimming your light, being quiet, shrinking back, or not taking the action that the imposter is preventing you from taking to protect you from a perceived threat that isn't there.
Yeah.
If we let the imposter voice take over, then we can be held back from achieving so many things, right? And a lot of that, in both our experience, is in public speaking. Because a lot of people don't do it, hold themselves back from doing it, feel they're not worthy of it, or really let their anxiety and nerves consume them because they think they're going to be found out, they're going to be discovered. So when it comes to public speaking and, sharing your ideas on a stage, because you've got such good experience with this, tell us about some of your thoughts on overcoming it if you are standing on a stage, if you're delivering a talk.
Oh gosh, it's definitely something that you learn to deal with. Gosh, if I think right back to, so I worked in a sales environment when I was in my mid-late 20s, early 30s. Big corporate organisation, part of General Electric, so global. And any opportunity to speak up, any opportunity to present, any opportunity to sell, I ran away 100 miles, because I was really scared, really, really scared. But when I set up my own business, and it was quite small to start with, I was a personal trainer. So teaching classes and doing personal training sessions was easy because it didn't feel like that was public speaking.
Yeah.
But do you know what? It is.
Yeah.
Just having a conversation with somebody you don't know for the first time is public speaking. But we tend to badge public speaking as you've got to have a microphone, you've got to be on stage in front of hundreds of people. Public speaking, let's boil it down to its tiniest thing, is communication. That's all it is. It's communication between either one other individual or a number of, and that can get bigger and bigger. So I'm just trying. I know I've gone a bit off piste here, but sort of going back to your question, my experience of imposter syndrome with public speaking will never end. It will never end. It just is always going to be there. But do you know what? I think it's almost a power, a superpower, because it shows that you care. It shows that you care. The voice in your head saying, should you really be doing this? Is it really, you're going to get found out? Is that superpower of being able to go, it's okay for me to be who I am and to say what I want to say. It is a superpower, and I think it's a really important thing to have, that little something saying to you, why are you doing this? To be able to have that inner dialogue to say, because I have an important message to share.
Yes.
Because I want to help others. Because I want to create a feeling.
That is a really important point to make, because that's when we can quieten that imposter, when we move ourselves out of the way of the message that we are trying to share, right? So if we focus on the people that we want to help and inspire with our message, then we are almost removing the self-preservation that comes with that Gollum voice of the protector, because we're making it about other people and not ourselves. Tell us about your role in the Lewes
Speakers Club.
Yes.
So at the moment, I have just taken on as president of Lewes Speakers Club. So Lewes Speakers Club is part of Toastmasters International, and that's what led me to become a public speaker. It led me to, with you, be a host on Radio Reverb and interview people. It led me to run Inspiring Talks Brighton and be the MC, be the host of introducing fabulous speakers. It led me to being a leadership development coach at Kent Fire and Rescue. So being president of Lewes Speakers Club is an absolute privilege, and I'm really proud to do it. And I've been there for 10 years now.
Wow.
So as president, you're the face of the club. I have to do a welcome and a little mini speech every meeting we have. So that's twice a month. So I have to open the meeting with some words of wisdom, and I have to close the meeting. For me, I like to make sure I'm listening to the meeting to be able to pick up on what have I learned, or what's been really good this evening, or to praise somebody who's done their first ever speech, encourage them to keep it going.
Yeah.
So Toastmasters International, for people that have never done public speaking or want to get better, without doubt, I think it's a fantastic organisation to be able to learn those skills in the safest and kindest and friendliest environment possible. And I think you learn more from listening and watching than you do from doing.
Tell us about that.
So you don't even have to go, if you're nervous to go, just go along and spend the first couple of months just watching, just listening, just observing. And that will grow your ability to be a public speaker.
What does that do for the imposter when you observe and you watch other people delivering talks?
You see their imposter. So you see it. You see their imposter, which makes you go, oh, they've got it too. And I think it calms everything down, because you recognise yourself in other people. So you recognise that person standing there. You see them physically shaking. You see them crossing their legs and crossing their arms and putting their, trying to look down. You see it, and I think for me, it made me feel, oh my goodness, it's not just me.
Of course, I'm being reminded of when I was curator for the TEDx event.
Yeah.
And I spent months helping the 12 speakers to prepare for their talks. And when it got to the day and we were in the green room, I was literally, coaching them on the spot to calm down their nerves and so many of them, who am I? Who's going to want to hear this? And then when they went out and they absolutely smashed it and I cried watching.
Yeah, I know you do.
Of course, then afterwards they were absolutely buzzing and that imposter was nowhere to be seen or heard. And it's in those crunch moments. It's who am I? What am I? Who's gonna listen to this? But then you put yourself in that situation and it never leave you, but it gets quietened just that little bit more.
Yeah, it does.
I'm thinking about strategies now because everybody likes a strategy, right? How can we quell the imposter, right? And I think exposure, like,
Yes, yes. Gentle exposure to, it's almost as simple as say hello to somebody in the queue in front of you in Tesco's. How's your day? Oh, you look nice today. You know, just those little comments of, because we don't do it, do we? You know, it's like it's going on the London Underground. When I was on the London Underground a couple of days ago, everybody is head down looking into their phone. Nobody wants to make eye contact. Nobody wants to say anything. But if you do, oh my goodness, the energy is very different. And you say to somebody, how are you? You having a nice day? Isn't it nice? So something as simple as that is a really good way to start. You know, saying hello to the big boss. So I work for the fire service, as I've already said. When you meet the chief for the first time, they're like, that's the chief. They're just a human being, just like you and me, exactly the same. So say hello. Ask them how their day is. Ask them what they're up to. They're not going to, because I think we worry that these senior people are going to ask us a really difficult question that we're not going to be able to answer. Are they really? You know, that Byron Katie thing of, is that really true?
Yeah.
And then ask it again, because if you say, yes, that's really true, that's what's going to happen. You go, how do I know that that is really true? And it makes you sort of step back and go, well, I don't actually. I think so. So I think that just starting to talk to people is a really good step. But that thought about what's going to happen next. So we're already catastrophizing. We're already going, but if I do that, then this is going to happen. Ask us, is that really true? But you can also go down that catastrophe, follow that catastrophe and go, okay, so they're going to ask me the most complicated question ever and I'm not going to know the answer. So what will I say? And go there. What will I say? Oh, I really don't know how to answer that question. Or I'm not sure what you're talking about. Could you just explain what you mean? Or I don't know.
A good one is, I don't have the answer for that right now, but I can
Yeah.
get it for you.
Yeah.
I'm just going to need a little bit of time to consult with someone or gather my thoughts, and I'll get back to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's exposure, it's self-reflection and questioning.
Yeah.
It's building on your self-knowing, self-love, self-care and acceptance, but to know that despite what anybody thinks about you, and people will have opinions, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's a good foundational place to start, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's that being curious and constantly learning, constantly growing. I think it's when we aren't doing that, then we almost shrink. I think if you are curious, you want to learn more, even if it's, you know, you see something on Facebook and you go, oh, never heard of that. And you just do a little bit of Google, you do a little bit of Chat GPT or something, and open your eyes to more. I think that really helps you to grow. And I think that's what comes from doing public speaking, is if you're going to write a speech and you've never written a speech before in your life before, find out how to do it, or just do it, get some feedback and learn from that. That's what you get from Toastmasters. You give a speech, you always get evaluated for everything, but you get that positivity of, I commend you for this. This was really good. Really liked that. I really like the fact that you used that word. You might not even have thought that was a great word, but it had an impact on the audience.
Yeah.
But then you'll get the, I would have liked it if you slowed down. I would have liked it if you had made it a bit clearer, the journey through your story. I'd have liked it more if you'd have closed rather than ran off stage. You know, we can get really, really nervous and we tell a great story and then we come to the end and we stop and everyone's waiting for a little bit more. Yeah, so those sorts of things will help.
Feedback, exposure, asking, welcoming feedback, welcoming opinions and views, to become a little bit more resilient to them, and know that they don't define you, and they don't have to be part of your identity, and you don't have to take it so personally.
Yes.
You know, I think that's something that a lot of people do and don't, and can become a little bit more resilient to,
Yes.
is allowing, you can receive the feedback and do whatever you want with it.
Yeah, you don't have to accept it as the truth.
No.
It's their truth, doesn't have to be your truth.
Exactly. So, as you're talking there, I'm thinking, gosh, 10 years in the Speakers Club, and you're president of the Speakers Club. You've done Inspiring Talks Brighton, you are emceeing, and you're doing this fantastic role within leadership development. What advice would you give? And we're going to move on to the last question I'm going to ask you in a minute about your words. But what advice would you give someone who has never done public speaking before and just wants to take that first step? Would it be to join a club?
Yes, definitely. That's definitely a good idea because you have that support system in place. So joining a club, getting a coach, getting someone else. I think it's hard to do it on your own. So, maybe networking, because within networking, you have to do a little bit of the public speaking anyway.
You do.
But build that support mechanism, work with a coach, join a club. And I think the biggest thing is just breathe and try, because we don't learn, listen to other people. I think one of the big mistakes I made when I first joined Lewes Speakers was there was a fabulous lady there who, for me, was very professional. If I describe it as she was sort of like a political speaker, like a newsreader. So had a huge vocabulary, very intelligent, got degrees, PhDs, etc., etc. I've not got any of that. I left school at 16, so I haven't got A levels and degrees. But that's okay because I've got vast experience in different things. But I tried to be like her. I made myself speak in her way, and it just didn't work. It didn't feel right. It didn't land. It didn't work. And I remember doing a presentations 2-day course when I worked for GE, and they made me do a speech, and they filmed it and everything, and they said feedback I got was very professional but so boring, and we didn't see you. And trying to be this other lady when I started Toastmaster it wasn't me. The day I let go of that and just went, do you know what? I'm going to speak how I speak, use my language, wiggle my arms around, because I do that a lot, and I'm aware that I do it a lot. It's okay. It's me. Yeah. That's the moment then that everything changed.
Well, I completely agree and feel the same. I talk about armour and professional armour, and how, trying to present ourselves in a certain way can sort of stymie that connection and all of those sorts of things. It feels harder. It feels more difficult and awkward. Take off that armour and feel okay to express yourself as you, and things start to happen. Things start to gain traction and really move.
Yeah, they really do. Show up as ourselves. And I know a lovely guy in the fire service recently, we did a big seminar, and I'd encouraged our senior leaders, so there's 4 new area managers, to share their public narrative story. So to share their reason to lead and offer a call to action to that room. And, these are senior people that have been in the fire service for a long time. They were absolutely petrified. They really didn't want to do it. But the impact of them showing who they were as opposed to who their rank is was incredible. That whole room were there listening to them.
Wow.
And one of them said he spent his whole life not being good enough, but he's turned it into his superpower because he knows that I am good enough, but I feel like I'm not. And he's turned it round. And to stand on stage in front of that whole room of, what were there, 90 odd people there, as a senior person, and say, I don't feel good enough every single day, they were all, oh my God. So I think that honesty piece, that authenticity is, I mentioned it earlier, that humility and authenticity and courage. And, to quote Brené Brown, we have to feel vulnerable to do that. To go from fear to courage, you have to go through that vulnerability, muddy puddle.
We do.
And once you feel more comfortable in that vulnerability, great things happen.
They do. Amen to that. Oh, amen to that. So I asked this question to all my guests because this podcast is called Words That Change Lives. I'd like to know, Lisa, what words have changed your life?
Well, I've got a few, but one that really helped me when I was just starting out in the whole business of my own and public speaking was the Winston Churchill one, which is, I've written it down, so I've got to get it right. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts. And I had it written above my desk. That, for me, really does. And then I think the Maya Angelou, which is interesting with this one. So people will forget what you did. They'll forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And I know we're talking about public speaking, and maybe you don't want people to forget what you've said. It's not about the words. It's about how that person feels at the end of it. So those two quotes, I think, are the most powerful for me. And I remember them, before I'm going on stage, whether I'm giving a speech, running a workshop, coaching somebody, being that MC, I think they're really, really important.
Oh, 100%. The first one really is a reminder in, just keep going with courage, led by courage.
Yeah.
And you'll be okay. The wins will come, the validation, whatever it is that you need to keep going now, because we will fail, we will make mistakes, and then we fail forward, right?
Yeah.
And then the second one, I love that one as well. That's actually one that has really resonated with me. Say that one again.
People will forget what you did. They'll forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel.
It's such a good reminder again as to why this is important. If you're listening and you're a leader, you're a business owner, you're a coach, consultant, you have to show up in some way. How you leave that impression on people, how you make them feel, whether you want to motivate them, inspire them, make them think differently, help them to take positive action. That's what it's all about, right?
Yeah, help them feel safe. I think that's something that I always think about with my, coaching clients, is that you give them that safety, that supportive environment to be themselves. That's, if you can give somebody that, it's
whether that's in a room full of people or a one-to-one meeting or or an online conference, whatever it might be, when people feel safe, then they feel safe to speak up as well. They feel safe to connect and engage and interact.
Yeah. And in that room at the weekend, with the person that disagreed, there was also another person that put their hand up who shared authentically and actually got very emotional and quite tearful. And she said afterwards to me, she said, I can't believe I shared that. But that's that creating that safety, psychological safety for people to open up.
I mean, that's a whole other topic. But that's really important to think about. Thank you, Lisa, for sharing your thoughts on this really important subject, along with your wisdom, your experience and your expertise. And for anybody wanting to know more about Lisa or to get in touch with her, everything will be in the show notes. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks, Helen.
Thanks for listening to Words That Change Lives. Please rate, review and follow on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts. It really means the world and helps me to reach more people so that we can all harness the power of our words and change lives for the better.